I'm Adam Drake from Team Losi Racing, and we're going to talk today about ride height, how important it is, how to set it, how often to set it, and just some basic tips to help you make sure your car performs the best that it can every day at the track. So ride height is basically just the distance between the ground surface and the bottom of your chassis. You adjust that with the spring collars, but basically it's just the distance between the bottom of the chassis and the ground. All right, so before you set your ride height, there's a few things you want to do to make sure that you're doing it correctly and that it's consistent. The first thing is you want to make sure that you're on a really flat surface. I have a pit board here from Upgrade, but any flat surface will work. You just want to make sure that you're not on an uneven table. Another thing you want to do is you'll want to take and measure your shock collars. You want to make sure you're starting with the shock collars consistent. My shock collars here are at 10.4. Check the other side. It's at 10.3, so I'll just adjust that just slightly until I'm at 10.4 on both. And then another thing that I do is once you have the collars adjusted to where they're equal right to left, is I'll then mark the shock collar with a silver Sharpie, or you can take a cutoff wheel and a Dremel and put a little silver line. That way when you're making adjustments, you know if you want to go a half a turn, you're going a half a turn on both right and left side. And then you'll repeat that process on the rear of the buggy, just making sure that the collars are equal, and then also marking the shock collars. Now there's a few different tools you can use to measure your ride height. I use the Losi ride height gauge. You can also use digital calipers or even a ruler. You just want to make sure whatever you're using that you're consistent with that and you're using the same thing every day. I would really recommend picking up a ride height gauge. They're fairly inexpensive, and it's just a really powerful tool to make sure that your ride height is consistent. The next thing is when you're measuring your ride height, you also want to make sure that you're really consistent with measuring it in the same spot. I've taken a Sharpie here and marked two black X's, one in the front and one in the back, so that you know where to measure. One of the things that's really critical and important is on the front of the car, the chassis has kick in it. So what you want to do is you want to measure right before the chassis bends up to where it's still on the flat. Now before setting your ride height, you want to make sure that your car is race ready, the way that you would hit the track. Full tank of fuel, the body on, tires, everything like that. That's how you're going to race with the car, so that's how you should set your ride height. Alright, so now you're ready to set your ride height. You have everything prepared, your fuel, everything in the car, it's race ready. Basically you'll just take the car from about 4 to 6 inches, you'll just drop it and let it settle, and then you'll come in from the back. And you can see there that I have a gap between the chassis and my ride height gauge. So I'll then just have to adjust the shock collars. I'm going to go about a turn. Drop the car again. Slide the gauge under. Still just a little bit of a gap, so I'm going to go half a turn this time. Drop the car from 4 to 6 inches. Now I'm actually just slightly low, so I'm going to go back that quarter turn, drop the car one more time, and you can see it slides right under and just touches the chassis. Now you'll repeat that for the front of the car. So I'll just turn the car around here, drop it from 4 to 6 inches, slide your gauge under until you get to the flat of the chassis, and the front ride height was right where I wanted it to be, so I only have to do that one time. Checking your ride height is so simple. It's something you should do every single time you go on the track. You could go out and have a run and everything be perfect, but you may get a little bit of dust or dirt that kind of binds up the suspension slightly. So you always want to check your ride height before every single time you hit the track, before practice, qualifiers, and also the main event. Now adjusting your ride height can be a really powerful and simple tool. If the track's extremely low grip, you can raise the car slightly, and what that'll do is it'll actually help generate some additional roll because you're raising the center of gravity. If you're on an extremely high bite track and your car is wanting to traction roll or flip, lowering the ride height will make it just stay kind of more sucked down to the track because it has a lower center of gravity, and it'll also make the steering smoother and easier to drive. Now if you raise the front of your car, because again it has a higher center of gravity, it'll generate more roll. That can make your car sometimes feel smoother, but a lot of times it'll actually be really twitchy and more aggressive because it's able to transfer more weight. With the rear of the car, in general, when the rear of the car is higher, it'll drive a little bit flatter, but also help generate more grip. When you lower the rear ride height, you'll decrease the forward grip slightly, but it'll just have a smoother off-throttle feel and kind of roll onto the rear of the car more. All right, so now kind of when you should run your car higher or lower. Generally a lower ride height won't accelerate quite as good through the bumps. You don't have as much ground clearance, so the car kind of stays sucked down and down into the bumps or jumps. Usually when the track gets rough, you'll want to run the car a little bit higher so you have that ground clearance to power through the bumps. But one thing that you need to be careful of is if your ride height is too high, it'll then, when you get into the turn, because of the higher center of gravity, it may cause the car to want to flip. It's really simple. You can have your pit guy down there half a turn at a time, just tweak your ride height and play with it yourself to see what works best for you. Now in general, you won't really adjust your ride height too much for how it's jumping, but you can fine tune with it. If your ride height is too low in the front, it can actually smack the face of the jump, causing it to pop up and jump nose high. Or if the rear of the car is too low, it can bottom out right in the face of the jump and then cause the car to want to nosedive. So you can tweak slightly with your ride height, but I pretty much don't use ride height too much to control how the car jumps, more of how it drives around the track and through the corners. I generally start with my ride height at 29 millimeters in the rear and 28 to 29 millimeters in the front. That's my standard setup that I run on most tracks, or at least start with on most tracks. If the track is lower grip and you're looking to generate a little more grip, I may raise the car 1 to 2 millimeters front to rear. If you want the steering to be a little bit smoother in the front, I'll drop the front end a little bit so it doesn't transfer quite as much weight to the front. Also, a higher ride height works really good in the bumps. It allows the suspension to have a little more clearance. If you're on a higher grip track, in general, higher grip, higher speed track, kind of a European style track, we'll run the ride height a little bit lower. Also in Europe, they don't have quite as many jumps and the tracks stay fairly smooth, just have a lot of grip. So the lower ride height just helps the car stay sucked down and makes it smoother and easier to drive on the high speed, high grip tracks.
So what are we going to demonstrate here?
How bad the car can handle. Right now the track's really high grip, so we're going to just raise the ride height a lot, where in general we would normally lower the ride height to make it stay sucked down, lower center of gravity, not want to flip. We're going to actually raise the ride height and then show how it goes around the track and how it's really tippy, wanting to get up on two wheels, just where it's kind of over aggressive.